Hello and welcome to session 4 of the 24th Biennial General Conference of the Association of Asian Social Science Research Councils. My name is Michelle Bruce and I'm the Secretary General of ASREC. And the topic of this year's ASREC conference is Navigating the Future with and After COVID-19, the Role of Social Sciences in Asia. And it's being hosted and convened by the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia. It's customary in Australia to offer an acknowledgement of country at the beginning of a meeting, speech or event. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are joining this event from today. And we'll do this with a brief video presentation.
Wherever you are across Australia,
we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land.
The Darug peoples.
The Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
The Gundungurra people of the Southern Highlands.
The Nguyen people of the Canberra region on whose country we are standing.
And all other peoples of this vast continent.
Their ongoing connection through custodianship of its land and waters.
Physical and spiritual.
Through culture, language and ceremony.
Where sovereignty was never ceded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and still to come.
Thank you. The ASREC Secretariat is located on Ngunnawal land in Canberra, and that's where I'm joining you from today. And I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. For those of you who are joining the conference for the first time, I'm going to run through a few housekeeping matters before we begin the presentations in session 4. The conference is proceeding as a series of 5 webinars with a different joining link for each session. Now, each session will consist of 15-minute presentations from each of the presenters. And following the presentations, we will hold a Q&A session with all of the panelists. If you'd like to ask the presenters a question, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we also encourage you to use the chat section to enter any comments you may have on the presentations. Please note that this event is being recorded and the recording will be available on the ASREC website after the conference. And just to clarify, we won't be recording the participants, we'll only be recording the presentations. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the chair and moderator of our 4th session, Alfred Deakin Professor, Dr. Fethi Mansouri. Professor Mansouri is Director of the Alfred Deakin Institute for Citizenship and Globalisation at Deakin University in Melbourne. He is the UNESCO Chairholder for Cultural Diversity and Social Justice and UNESCO Uni-Twin Convener for Interreligious Dialogue and Intercultural Understanding. And he's also a Fellow of the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia. Over to you, Professor Mansouri.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and welcome everyone to this 4th session of the conference. Certainly the topic of this session, in particular lockdown, how COVID has changed how we live, learn and work is extremely important. It does reflect the disruptions and the devastation that the COVID has caused many societies globally. But before we start the session, let me also start by acknowledging that I am joining you today virtually from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, and also acknowledge that this land has never been ceded. We have today a very exciting and interesting panel from, exciting because of the different disciplinary perspectives that we will be enjoying and listening to later on, but also in terms of the geographic spread from which the speakers are coming and joining us. Indeed, we have speakers from Japan, Sri Lanka, also India, and later on Vietnam. The topic really is about social adaptation to COVID, and we will touch upon a number of issues from the digital disruptions and how digital disruption has impacted societies unequally, unevenly, perhaps, but also in terms of other important critical issues in terms of food production and how that impacted many societies from the global south. So without further ado, let's get started. And the first speaker is Dr. Reiko YAMADA. Dr. Reiko YAMADA is Her topic will be, can higher education institutions cultivate global competencies in the era of COVID-19? Comparative study of student survey from Japan. Dr. Yamada is a professor in the Faculty of Social Science and director of the Center for Higher Education and Student Research at Doshisha University in Kyoto, Japan. She is also the president of the Japan Association for College and University Education and a member of the Social Science Council of Japan. Over to you, Dr. Yamada.
Thank you very much for introducing me, and I hope that everyone can hear my voice. Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. My title is Can Higher Education Institutions Cultivate Global Competences in the Era of COVID-19? We did a comparative study of student survey in Japan, United States, South Korea, and Taiwan. And as the background of the study, I'd like to say that COVID-19 has spread throughout the world. Even today, vaccination levels vary from country to country, and the return to a situation centered on face-to-face university education is not fixed. This unprecedented coronavirus pandemic has had a large impact on institutions of higher education worldwide. We have the changes pre- and post-pandemic to values and norms constructed in response to the changing times while drawing on the past and the various systems people have built in recent years. And there may even be global scale paradigm shifts. The purpose of the research, this study considers the ideal state and direction of university education with corona and post-corona pandemic. And hereafter, I refer to together as the corona era. It will examine the new normal and the possibilities and challenges it brings in relation to the direction and development of global competences through university education based on comparative study. As a problem settings, I'd like to say that this study will go on to an empirical investigation conducted by an online questionnaire that surveyed the following. Whether university education tailored to the gains of these global competences, hereafter I like to say GC, and organized on the premise of free movement across borders, namely study abroad programs and overseas internships conducted face-to-face are able to perform the same function in the corona era as before, and whether GC and 21st century values sought across so many countries are transforming or not. As the research outline, we picked up the 4 countries. Taiwan has been successful to control corona pandemic in 2020. United States has not necessarily been successful to control corona pandemic in 2020. And Japan and Korea, South Korea, are positioned to be somewhere in between Taiwan and United States. In this study, as a definition of global competences and research is global competences, GC, are defined as skills that work together with diverse people and to find and solve problems in this study. And the survey outline, the survey targeted bachelor's degree students in their second year or higher, and graduate students in Japan, the United States, South Korea, and Taiwan. However, first-year students who matriculated during the COVID-19 crisis were excluded in this study. The questionnaire survey was conducted through an internet research company on a nationwide scale in each of those 4 countries from September until the end of November of 2020. We got the respondent from 4 countries, 3,296 in total. Japan, 1,030, United States, 824, South Korea, 824, and Taiwan, 618. And undergraduate students are 2,683, and graduate are 613. And most of them are coming from the United States sample. And this slide shows the experience at university before and after COVID-19 pandemic. For example, I like to introduce some of the items. Discussed coursework with classmates, studied with other classmates, submitted course assignments through online, participated in options study or research group, tutored an international student, participated and presented in an academic conference in the foreign country, and so on. And all items declined across the board in all 3 countries. Experience that has been regarded as important as student engagement has stagnated in the era of corona pandemic. And this slide shows the gains of the GC before and after COVID-19 pandemic. For example, learning outcome of global competence, for example, can survive in different cultural environment, can approach different cultures with an open mindset, can work with people of different cultural backgrounds, can befriend people of different cultural backgrounds, and so on. It's set up. We set up the 28 items in these questionnaires, and I can say that in the United States and South Korea, the gains status of GC after the corona pandemic is generally lower than before the corona. In both countries, there are declines, namely 22 out of 24 items in the United States and 23 items in Korea. In Taiwan, items related to actual cross-cultural practice and behaviors declined. Items related to knowledge acquisition and attitude increased instead. However, there is no statistical significant difference of TTS of Taiwan. Now, in Korea, STEM, knowledge of information field and utilization of multiple languages, there is no significant differences. All remaining items have significant differences. In the United States, there are declines in items such as humanities, social sciences, STEM, knowledge in the information field, multilingual field, and challenge for innovation, but there are no statistically significant differences. This slide shows the class type during COVID-19. In Taiwan, proportion of completely face-to-face classes is between 26 to 15% in all small, middle, and large scale, and classes involving experiments and practical training, and classes involving seminar. Instead, proportion of online classes is around 35% in large-scale class only. In the United States, online classes account for around 60% in all types of classes. The proportion of face-to-face class tends to be lower. In Korea, proportion of online class is highest and face-to-face class is lowest in 3 countries. And summary of gains of global competences in 3 countries. Regarding the gain status of GC before and after the corona pandemic, in the United States and Korea, the gain status of GC after the corona pandemic is generally lower than before the corona pandemic. But in Taiwan, where face-to-face lessons are held, it has not decreased in general. So we can say that face-to-face has a very effective, effectiveness for maintaining the global competences in Taiwan's case. From here, I'd like to focus on the result of Japanese case. This slide shows the Japanese experience at the university before and after COVID-19 pandemic. The items are same as I showed in the 3 countries. The experience rate of Japan is low compared to 3 countries before the COVID-19 pandemic, even before the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, it is extremely low in terms of discussions with other students, participation in voluntary study sessions, and cross-cultural exchange items. And this slide shows the gains of GC before and after COVID-19 pandemic in Japanese case. I can say that Japanese average value for all items before and after COVID-19 is significantly lower than that of 3 countries. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, there are no items with an average value of 3 or more. In the United States, most of the items exceeded 3 or more. Taiwan is relatively close to the 3 or more, but Korea is a little bit lower than 3 or more, but Japan's most of them are lower than 3 or more. Except for the 2 items with low average values, the gains GC was significantly reduced after COVID-19 pandemic in Japanese case. This tendency is, however, very close to the Korea. Korea is also significantly reduced after Corona pandemic. This slide shows the comparison of scores of factor analysis of GC in Japan. Although the position of 2 items, knowledge of social science and knowledge of humanities, are different, they are similar to the result of the factor analysis in 3 countries. I did not show you the scores of factor analysis of 3 countries, but very close to the factor analysis result of Japan. The subscale scores of 3 factors are professional practical ability, cross-cultural collaboration, and basic cultural skills. And all 3 factors, the scores of all 3 factors are higher in men than in women. So after the Corona pandemic, women's scores becomes lower than that of men. This slide shows the form of class in COVID-19 pandemic in 4 countries. And online lessons are rare in Taiwan, as I said before, but also not only in Japan. Rather, the rate of fully introducing face-to-face lessons in the latter half of 2020 in Japan is higher than in Korea and the United States, which is close to 20%. The reason is that the Ministry of Education urges all Japanese universities to have the face-to-face education, even in the Corona pandemic. Japan is similar to Korea, in contrast to the United States, which offers online services, regardless of scale, lectures, or exercises. In Japan, there are many more face-to-face meetings than in Korea, and about 20% to 30% of classes that involve experiments and practice and exercises. So as a summary of Japanese case, I'd like to say that most of them student samples have been educated after high school in Japan. In case of Korea and in case of Taiwan, some of them are educated in other countries. So they have experience of study abroad or studies in other countries. But the Japanese case, most of the students are not educated in other countries and have less experience abroad, cross-cultural exchange and collaborative learning than in other countries before the Corona pandemic. The gain status of GC was low compared to other countries, but the probability of gains after COVID-19 pandemic is further reduced.
Dr. Yamada, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay, sure. The last part. In Japan, the rapid shift to online lessons may have a negative impact on the gains of GC. However, the result of this study shows that there is a lack of overseas experience and cross-cultural exchange. We can see various problems such as lessons that are not fully linked to the learning and collaborative learning activities. So we have to realize and solve structural problems of Japanese university education, not only the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yamada. Certainly very, very interesting comparative perspectives there, which I'm sure we'll pick up later on in the discussion. We move on now to our second speaker, Ms. Nayana Amarawickrama, yes, who will be talking about an extremely important topic also, which is digital technology and the impact of COVID on lower skilled workforce in Sri Lanka. And as I said earlier, I think the digital divide between the global north and global south has been one of the biggest structural, if you like, problems that COVID has unraveled, but also exacerbated. Just introducing Ms. Nayana is a lecturer in Sri Lanka with over 10 years of experience in teaching all subjects of management and research methodology in public and private universities. Her research interests include workplace aggression and harassment, organizational culture and learning, employee health and safety, and career development. Over to you, Ms. Nayana.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you all see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, Honorable Chair, the distinguished audience. My name is Nayana Amarawickrama. I am going to present the paper with Professor Anjan Hettiarachchi, who is my co-researcher. We are grateful to the National Science Foundation for nominating us to represent Sri Lanka at this world-renowned research symposium to discuss the threats, challenges, and solutions to global pandemic. Today, we will give a presentation on digital technology and the impact of COVID-19 on the low-skilled workforce in Sri Lanka. This is the overview of my presentation, where introduction, problem, aim and objectives, theoretical foundation, methodology, findings and discussion suggestions are given, followed by the conclusion. Let me take a few moments to provide an overview of the country. Sri Lanka is an island in the Indian Ocean, and it is known as the Pearl of the Indian Ocean. The total population of the country is 21.8 million. The ethnic composition consists of approximately 75% Sinhalese, 15% Tamil, 9% Moors and Malays, and 1% others. Sector-wise, 77.4% of the population live in rural area, 18.2% in urban, and the rest 4.4% in the estate sector. According to the World Bank report 2021, Sri Lanka is a lower middle income country with a GDP per capita of US $3,682. Today, we are going to talk on the situation of the COVID-19 and its impact in Sri Lanka, with a special focus on the low-skilled workforce. Let me give a brief introduction about the pandemic situation in Sri Lanka. As at 16th October 2021, Sri Lanka had recorded a total of 531,070 confirmed patients and 13,472 deaths since the first patient was diagnosed in late January 2020. With the discovery of new COVID variants, the situation has become much more complicated. The COVID pandemic has resulted in a slowdown in production, trade, supply chain networks, transportation, social networking, and political network system due to fertilities, social distancing, curfew, and the lockdown of the whole working mechanism of the society. Disruptions in the manufacturing of essential and necessary goods have caused the working class to suffer significantly. Issues in manufacturing of most essential goods, in particular, may cause social discontent. Less demand and lack of effective supply chain network could accelerate the current degree of unrest. Despite the fact that we face these challenges as a developing country and find them difficult to overcome, the government has set up effective measures to combat the pandemic. The government has implemented a number of social welfare programs to assist those who have been affected. The government has established social welfare initiatives such as donating a bag of essential food items and even financial support to the poor. To combat COVID-19, a task force led by civil, military, and health officials was formed, and the government is taking all feasible measures to control the pandemic, including a vaccination project, introduction of new local medicines, increase ward and develop intermediary centers, increase hospital facilities, guidelines from the ministry to authorities to follow, and even media campaign, awareness program throughout the country, travel restrictions, travel ban, lockdown the country, ceremony, festival and festival ban and restrictions, and even no gatherings, and of course the close of education institutions. This study focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on low-skilled workforce. According to the Employment Diagnostic Study 2017, about 50.1% of the working population is low-skilled. Among them, 26.5% represent agriculture sector, 27.1% represent industry, and service sector 46.4%. Let me highlight important features of low-skilled workforce in Sri Lanka. The majority of low-skilled workers are low-income people, and they have a low education level and high employment in service sector. Although the Sri Lankan government is successfully implementing all preventive measures to curb COVID-19, the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic continuously have a significant impact on social and economic activities of the country. During the time of social distancing, the digital economy has played a critical role in the continuation of economic activity. Despite the fact that digital technology provides tools to enable governments and businesses to continue their operations and even create opportunities to increase the productivity, it is debatable whether low-skilled people who were able to gain access to these digital platforms in order to face the difficulties and challenges that arose. As low-skilled employee contributes have increased dramatically in the labor market and even have become a significant in Sri Lanka, their significant contribution cannot be ignored. Therefore, this study investigates the digital technology adoption and how it has affected low-skilled workforce in the context of COVID-19. The research carried out to address two research questions. What is the nature of the low-skilled workforce in Sri Lanka? What are the issues and challenges in adopting digital technology on the low-skilled workforce in the context of COVID-19? This study is based on the Gary Baker's human capital theory. Using qualitative research methodology, we conducted a structured in-person interview with 100 low-skilled workers from various industries who works in office to identify the difficulties that arose when performing job tasks in the context of COVID-19, as well as in-depth in-person interviews with 20 executives from various industries to identify challenges that arose when they received the services. Participants were from both the public and private sector, including manufacturing, banking, healthcare, and education. The participants were selected using purposive sampling techniques through personal contacts and snowballing. To determine the economic status of the country, low-skilled workers, we used the central bank report titled Sri Lanka Social Economic Data 2020, as well as joint publications of the Asian Development Bank and the International Labour Organization titled Employee Diagnostic Study 2017. The analysis was carried out using thematic analysis. Although the digital economy has been critical in ensuring the continuing of activities across governments, business and society during time of social distancing, our research found that low-skilled workers faced a number of difficulties and challenges in adapting to digital technology in order to continue their work. It also revealed in the study that the digital technology has influenced the government sector's ability to obtain services from low-skilled workers. The study also showed that the job destructions of low-skilled workers in the private sector during the COVID-19 pandemic was significant. Using this thematic analysis, the study revealed three major reasons for unsatisfactory service by low-skilled workers who worked in office environment in both the public and private sectors. This thematic map highlights those three major reasons, such as reluctance to embrace the digital technology due to low level of education, difficulty affording technical tools due to low level of income, and failure to create a national is related to their low level of education, which has an impact on low-skilled workers' digital technological awareness. Right, let me further elaborate the findings of our study. The first one was that reluctance to embrace the digital technology due to a low level of education. According to the employment diagnostic study, the low-skilled labor force has not completed secondary school. Despite the fact that the public education system provides comprehensive coverage beginning in early childhood, there is a rapid increase in school dropouts at young age. It was confirmed that dropout at young ages has resulted low-skilled workforce with insufficient new technological knowledge. As young people are leaving school without completing their secondary education and not being properly directed, even vocational education for those accelerated the entries the workforce with the low level of education, which resulted in increasing low-skilled workforce. Also, the study revealed that they lacked a fundamental understanding of digital technology, including the use of various digital devices and new software, as well as the use of social media such as WhatsApp, Twitter, Messenger, Imo, and various types of computer applications too. As a result, low-skilled workers are hesitant to embrace digital technology, resulting in unsatisfactory service and even job losses. Differences in employee age groups, on the other hand, have been shown to have a significant impact on this issue. In this case, as employees between the age of 45 and 60 found the use of these digital devices to be inappropriate and even annoying, whereas employees between the age of 20 and 40 had a more positive attitudes towards the use of these devices. So if I move into the second findings, the difficulties of afford for the technical devices due to the low income level. Sri Lanka being a lower middle income country, the majority of the population is low income earners. So these low income earners who are struggling to meet their basic needs find it extremely difficult to obtain high-priced technology devices such as computers, tablets, smartphones, laptops, etc. Many low-skilled workers in Sri Lanka are low-income earners who do not earn adequate income to meet their basic need in the current economic situation. As the study confirmed that the daily wage workers have a negative impact on their income. So we focused on their economic and social problems as well as institutional help in the acquisition of digital devices, data facilities for their services. Furthermore, while it is true that low-skilled government workers' income is unaffected by whether or not they are summoned to work, the extra expenditure on data accesses and acquisitions of digital devices from their income has become an additional burden for them, as well as a significant issue in managing their day-to-day expenses. It was therefore clear to us that the low-income earners suffered by the difficulty of obtaining the internet service that they charge exorbitant prices. So the third findings, the failure to create a digital technology platform at the national level for the promotion of their employment. According to the study, the government has not made a sufficient effort to create a digital platform to improve the promote low-skilled work. The government was unable to increase domestic digital resource mobilization. Private enterprises have been heavily damaged by the present outbreak.
Amarawickrama, Amarawickrama, 1 minute, please.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That they are unable to provide a free data package to their employees. The establishment of island-wide data facilities is an urgent need in launching the country towards development, and discussion with the executives from both the private and public sector confirm the need for a state intervention. So despite the fact that inequitable the access to digital technology across the country, a lack of fast connectivity and the unavailability of internet-enabled devices, and lack of digital transactions technology such as mobile money to pay suppliers and receive customers' payments are regarded as a significant drawbacks in promoting low-skill jobs. So let me conclude the findings. Since the COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on Sri Lanka labor force, resulting in an economic vacuum in the country, this research focused on identifying issues and challenges using digital technology obtained service by lower skilled workers. A study revealed that there were 3 reasons for workers' unsatisfactory service, both in the public and the private sectors. That is, reluctance to embrace digital technology due to the low level of education, difficulty of affording technological tools due to the low income level, and failure to create a digital technology platform for the national level for the promotion of their employment. Further research is needed to investigate the workers' performance in environment when necessary facilities are available. So I will introduce certain suggestions. So since science and digital technology knowledge and a high skilled labor force is necessary to support Sri Lanka's ambitions to become a globally competitive, the government's strategic plan should focus on improving the quality of secondary education inclusive of digital technology. It is proposed to implement a loan scheme with government assistance to help low-skilled workers purchase technical tools, as well as to create platform that allows low-skilled workers to contribute through digital technology. Okay, Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Amarawickrama. Certainly many important topics that you've touched upon in relation to the impact of the pandemic in the context of digital platforms and their impacts for vulnerable communities. So we'll come back to you later on, hopefully with some questions. We'll move on now to the third presenter, Dr. Nguyen, who will present on a topic that's very close to my heart personally, reflections on social capital and resilience and the changing pattern of migration in coping with COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Thiele is a researcher at the Institute of Human Studies, the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. She has participated in academic research and developmental projects on human development, human rights, human security, food security, and health. And I just want to share with you that even though the paper is not included in the pack that's been provided to all the participants, the paper has been submitted to us, and Michelle will make sure that we reach all of you in due course. So over to you, Dr. Thiele.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm very happy to present my paper. Actually, it's in the process of researching, so it's not really completed because of the field work. It's very difficult now in Vietnam because of COVID-19 situation. Then I will try to present as much as possible my research result so far, and based on the recommendation, I will complete my paper later. I work in the social capital and resilience, changing pattern of migration in coping with COVID-19 pandemic. And my paper will wrap with the 5 parts. The first one is the introduction. Second one, theoretical framework and methodology, and introduce about the Hmong society and mobility. And the first is the role of social capital and in building resilience in Hmong community. And the first, in the last is the conclusion. Many studies reflect that people in the borderlands between China and Vietnam have often dynamic, and they move between the frontiers to earn money and for their livelihood activities. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic that happened in 2019, they have not been able to pursue this livelihood. And instead, Hmong people started to migrate to other provinces inside the country for work. And the migration for work pattern of the Hmong people in northern Vietnam in response of COVID-19 pandemic will illuminate the way that social capital serves a critical part of resilience. My paper tried to show that how social capital and connectedness not only enhance resilience, but how community create and sustain them by changing patterns of migration and diversity in their livelihood. And about the social capital and resilience, social capital is understand like the feature of social organization, such as network, norms, and social trust that facilitate coordination and cooperation that mutual benefits. Then 3 distinct types of social capital is identified. The first one is bonding social capital, and bridging social capital, and linking social capital. And resilience is defined in this paper as the capacity of an individual, household, community, or system to respond over time to shocks and to proactively reduce the risk of future shocks, that ensures stressors and shocks do not have long-lasting adverse development consequences. And social capital influences community-level resilience. And many research has shown that social capital can enhance community resilience. And 3 types of social capital can enhance resilience in the different type. And community with higher level of the 3 types social capital are more resilient than those with only 1 or no social capital. I work in the Dong Văn district, Hà Giang province in Vietnam. It's a northern northeast area of Vietnam and the border between China and Vietnam. And in Dong Văn is the place that Hmong people residents, and with nearly 19% of Hmong people living here. And my research based on the two phases of study. The first one is the 1 year field work in 2016 and 2017. That's beyond my PhD field work. And in this time, I make a household survey and interview with 200 households. And in phase 2, actually I was going to go to the field work to do the household survey again to with the 200 households to know about the new situation of migration. But because of the COVID-19 situation, that we are not allowed to go to the field, so I could not do it. And I tried to interview with the authorities and some Hmong people who participated in the migration from China or other provinces, who is in quarantine or also either already go to the other province.
Dr. Nguyen, can I please just ask you if you could to go back to the slides presentation view and change the mode, because I think the characters are a little bit small for people to read. So if you can just go and actually start your presentation, then the slides will show us, they'll be a little bit larger in terms of the font size. If you can, if it's too much of a hassle, that's okay.
Yeah, I tried.
Maybe that's better. Okay, so you just,
okay.
Thank you. You'll need to do that for each slide. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And next one, I will introduce about the Hmong Society and mobility. It's about the Hmong Society. It's important to say that Hmong Society is as a values and kinship-based society because it related to the social capital of the Hmong people. Hmong Society, they based on the kinship relationship, that the community don't have the head of the village or of the community, but each kinship had a head, and each household had a head. So the kinship is a very important and important social network of the Hmong society. And that's why they have a connection between the Hmong people in Vietnam and Hmong people in China who have a same kinship, and they don't count for the geography that they in Vietnam or in China, but they count for the kinship. That as the same kinship, they will keep the relationship and they will have each other in livelihood activity and other cultural activity. And about the mobility, since 1986 to 2010 as statistic, migration of Hmong people all around the country in Vietnam increased very much, but only in population in Dong Văn and in this the village I study relatively stable. That there have been no considerable migration or immigration movement in the region for decades. However, recently, migration for work has been a popular phenomenon among Hmong people. Dong Văn is one of the 64 poorest districts of Vietnam with a high rate of poverty and hunger, and the authority encouraged people to go to China or other provinces to work for remittance and jobs. Actually, before COVID-19, most the government focused on the China movement, but not other province in Vietnam. And the migration pattern before COVID-19 is before 2012 is the Vietnam government have a specific program to encourage the people to migrate to other province or other countries to find a job. But in fact, for this program, just have 2 people following the program from 2016 to 2019. Just have 2 people following the program of the government. But in contrast, the illegal migration to China for temporary labor has been emerging. And according to report of the People Committee in Commune A, the total number of people who migrated illegally in the first 6 months of year 2015 were more than 400. And there are 13 households whom they migrate the whole family, and they rent the land for the other to make agriculture. And is that similar in community? Just in 6 months of 2016, there were more than 600 people illegally working in China. And the number in reality may be larger, because as my survey that most of household in the country in the village has at least one person go to China for work like illegally. However, because of the COVID-19 happened in 16-19, that the authority very strict in the migration to China, and people cannot go to the China anymore. And now the government focused encourage people to go to other provinces in Vietnam to work. However, more people this time also do not want to allow the program of the authority, but they move by themselves with their own social network. And the reason why the interview with the Hmong people revealed that, because they find that when they move with the social network, with their own network, with the Hmong people, other Hmong people go to the other province, call them and say that in this company we have more employment and you can come here, and it's very quick employment enroll in compared with the waiting for the program of the authority. And the second one is the flexibility in working time, because the Hmong people they go to the other province to work for cash, but they also pursue the agriculture work. So they want to very flexible in time. They want to go to 2 months or 3 months and then go back to do the agriculture. But if they go with the program of the authority, they cannot do that, because it's a contract will be 6 months or 1 year at least. And the third reason is the flexibility in that payment. If the people go with the government policy, they have to have a loan with the government, and then they have to pay at the due and win many documents to do it. But if they go with the other people like unofficially, they can pay whenever they have money and no document required. So this is a number of the people now about the Vietnam. As we see that Hmong people in the village go many provinces in Vietnam now. In compared with the before COVID-19, that almost no one go to other provinces in Vietnam, but to go to China. But now, because the China border closed, so they have to go to the other provinces, and they go by the social network. And this is one of the I would like to talk about the story of Mr. Lung, who now is a quarantine because he just moved from the Bình Dương province, south of Vietnam. It's like 1,000 kilometers far from Hanoi. And in 2019, he moved to China unofficially, and in 3 months, and he can earn a lot of money, and then he go back because of the COVID-19. And in at the beginning of this year, he moved to Bình Dương with his 5 friends, and he just worked in 3 months. Then he was in quarantine and social distancing in Bình Dương, and no salary in 3 months. And in September 2021, he decided to go back by motorbike. He and his friend drive in 4 days and 3 nights to go back to the hometown, and now still in quarantine in Hazang province with no policy protection and no salary, no money. And then we see that the role of social capital in building resilience. Here we can say see that the bonding social capital is built on the trust, reciprocity, and cooperation, and assume a high level of familiarity, often at the cost of privacy. Is play the main role in social capital in the Hmong people. Most of Hmong people now migrate to other provinces or go to China by their own social network with the Hmong people in their kin and their friends or their neighbor, but they don't. So we can say that the bonding social capital is play the most important roles in the migration and resilience. And bridging social capital is especially effective for addressing cooperative shocks. Because the Hmong people now migrate to many provinces, so they can build up with the people in other provinces that they can ask to help in the shock and the crisis. And the linking social capital is a vertical links can provide otherwise available resources and information, and are therefore important for economic development and resilience. However, yet we see the linking social capital of the Hmong people is quite weak, because maybe they don't believe in the program of the government, or maybe it's not suitable enough for them to follow the organization of the government. So this social capital is quite weak in the Hmong people. And then we can see that the social capital can fill gaps where markets and government fall short, and providing unofficial institutions that are needed for society to function as a complement for official institutions, especially when costs and contracting would be very high, because the many procedure and document when we follow the government programs. So the Hmong people do not prefer follow the migration of the government, but they prefer to use their social network to migrate to other provinces to work. And it appears that bonding social capital is used first among the Hmong people. And then if they don't have friends or Hmong in kinship people, they will ask for the other people that they know in the other provinces for help. And then finally, when they don't have any social capital, they will ask for the help of the government, that the linking social capital. And Hmong people in Dongguan have strong bonding social capital. However, social capital is not always beneficial for society, and bonding social capital strengthen ties between people within a group, but exclude those who are not part of the group. We can enforce social differences, and bonding social capital therefore enforces social differences, which will benefit a member of the group, but will adverse long-term effect for society as a whole. Because the Hmong people, they depends on, and they just prefer to work with the people in the kin. So maybe it will be limit the other social capital, like bridging social capital and linking social capital. So in the future, to ensure the resilience of the government, beside the bonding social capital, Hmong people and the government should focus on the enhance the bridging social capital and the linking social capital of the Hmong people to help them have a sustained livelihood and the well-being of the Hmong people. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tsali. Move on to the last presenter of the day, last but not least, Dr. Purwanto, who will talk about how the pandemic has affected households in response to food security and poverty in Indonesia. So yet another interesting regional perspective on the impact of the pandemic. briefly introducing Dr. Purwanto, who is a researcher in the Economic Research Center of the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, and has conducted research activities on rural development issues, including food security and poverty reduction in Indonesia. In 2020, during the first wave of the COVID-19 outbreaks, he led a team to conduct rapid survey in household food security during the pandemic. And I think that's an extremely important angle that we bring onto this discussion, Dr. Purwanto. So over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much from the chairman, Mr. Pansori, for introduce myself. And I would like to make a little bit information about my research institute, because now I'm working as a researcher in National Research and Innovation Agency. This is the new research institute formed by the Indonesian government. Consists of 5 research institutes merged into one big research institute called BRIN, or we call it a National Research and Innovation Agency. Okay, just brief intro about my institution, and then I would like to present my paper on how the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic affected food security and poverty in Indonesia. This paper is prepared by my team. Esta Lestari is the lead author, and then Felix Wisnuhandoyo, Asana Hidayatina, myself, and then Chitra and Eka Nurjati is part of the team. The overview of my presentation will be introduction at the first, and then material and method, result and discussion, and conclusion for the last part. Begin with the introduction. Indonesia has met the first and second waves of the COVID-19 crisis with around 4 million cases in total and still rising slightly, with an attention in potential risk for the third wave of a pandemic. So we are still aware of the possibility of the third wave of the COVID-19. And then COVID-19 is affecting food security and become one of the global concern about the consequences of the variety of restriction policies around the world, including in Indonesia. At this situation, people will try to maximize their effort to cope with the adverse effect of the pandemic in their household food security. And then for these reasons, many families are concerned about the coping strategies to keep survive and stay healthy in both urban and rural areas. This study aims to explore the effect of early COVID-19 outbreaks on the food security status and poverty of Indonesian households. It is expected that this study could address the change in household food security and its implications for efforts to develop coping strategies to maintain adequate food consumption for all people. This is a brief picture of number of confirmed cases in Indonesia, and also the type of social restriction imposed by the Indonesian government. Indonesian government avoid the term of lockdown, and then they prefer to use the term of restriction in some term. At the first, they call it large-scale social restriction at the first wave of COVID outbreaks, and then in the last period, or in the current period, still in this period, they call it as the community activities restriction enforcement, and then they spread it into some level from level 1 to 5. 5 is the tight level, and 1 is the loose level. Based on the survey that we conduct, we use the online survey by using the questionnaire to the household in Indonesia by using the online survey, because it is impossible to make a face-to-face interaction with people during the COVID outbreaks. The survey was voluntary, confidential, and anonymous, and then the data analysis were obtained from 1,499 respondents. The survey conducted from 15th of September to 5th of October 2020, and the online survey launched through online survey platform and distributed through emails and other social media messaging system. Descriptive statistics were used to define the proportion of response among respondents, and then quantitative analysis by using profit-locate model to find out the effect of COVID-19 to food security and poverty. And then the for Household Food Security Index adopted from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and calculated using the indicator collected from the survey. For household food security outcome constructed and calculated in 4 categories, namely food secure, food insecure without hunger, food insecure with moderate hunger, and food insecurity with severe hunger. The result for household food security, we can see from the figure 2 that the most respondents were still in food secure between March and October 2020, because we asked the question from the beginning of the COVID outbreaks up to the time of the survey conducted. And then around 63.80% respondent mentioned that they are still in food secure according to the indicator that we calculated. And then around 41.20% of respondents were in a food insecure condition at the time. Of them, 23.8% were food insecure without hunger, 10.10% were food insecure with moderate hunger, and 2.3% were food insecure with severe hunger. At the first wave of the COVID-19, most households could still access food, and the availability of food was still sufficient at the time. The coping strategy implemented in household, mostly that the immediate coping strategy by withdraw their saving, around 47.7% of the total respondent. The pandemic also forced people to consume local foods. Local food means something that are less expensive than their daily food, because it's something they buy food from many sources and also many quality. And then about 22.9% of respondents maintain their daily budget at the lowest expense. So people try to maintain their budget at the lowest possible, but still try to consume healthy food for their daily needs. As 15.2% of the respondents mentioned that they used their food stock during the pandemic. And then for those who are suffering from the COVID-19, some are forced to incur debt and then sell assets and then ask for help from families or relatives or from the government, and also borrow food. Another coping strategy but to meet their daily diet, various strategy undertaken by the household to maintain their health during pandemic by consuming more fruits, stated by 68.6% of the respondents, by consuming vegetables, and then also consuming a traditional herbal drink, about 56%, known as empon-empon. This is a type of herbal drink that consists of raw honey, spices such as turmeric, tamarind, ginger, lemongrass, and cinnamon, that they believe that it can increase their immunity to fight against COVID-19. And then also there are a limitation of intake of junk food and also soft drink and foods with preservative as a strategy carried out by more than 30% of the household to reduce the health risk. And the result from the regression on household food security is the result of the regression, but I will try to summarize in the description that the estimation on the factor affecting household food security by using our and longitude model, formal job, higher education, smaller household size, higher household expenditures, better food access, and less consumption strategies have statistically significant positive effect on food security for all levels. And then household with higher expenditure and better access to food, which means that household with a better economic status are more likely to be food secure at national, urban, and rural level. When I say national, mean the total respondent, and then we spread it into urban and rural. However, the various variables of household size and coping strategy has a negative impact on household food security. For coping strategies, the more strategies a household use to meet the food needs, the more people tend to be food insecure. Efforts to meet domestic intake by practicing home gardening or ranching didn't have a statistically significant effect on their food security level. Social programs were affected significantly only in the second middle of the regression after taking out the household size and expenditure variable and only in national or total and urban areas. As the data skewed toward urban areas, this may mean that urban areas benefit more from social assistance. This is another regression model about the result from the poverty. Estimating the effect of the food security index on poverty, the result shows that location, food security index, formal job, and education have significantly affected poverty, which means that people who live in urban areas have a higher food security index, have a formal job, and have a higher education level. Thus, they tend to live in the not a poor category. Social protection variable have a positive impact on poverty. On the other word, tends to live in a poor condition. Even though the results are too early to claim that the social protection program is on target, at least the OLS regression shows that the social protection variable is statistically significant. Then the results are the same in urban area and also in rural areas. The households who live in urban areas are less likely to be in the poor category. And then similarly, the households with the high food security are less likely to be poor for all levels. However, the social protection variable shows a positive impact on poverty at the first 1% level of significance in all areas. The impact of each level is 85.3%, 61.1%, and 13.9% respectively. This also confirms that social protection programs tend to deliver to their target, which are poor households. The government effort during the pandemic, we can say that the government of Indonesia is continuously providing assistance in various schemes as a social safety net accounted for 695 trillion rupiah in 2020. And then there was a short-term panic buying at the early stage of COVID-19 outbreaks. People worry that the food scarcity will happen because the market is closed and etc. So then the government maintains the availability and access to food through price stabilization to maintain domestic food market, especially for strategic commodities such as rice, oil, meat, egg, poultry. And then a program related to food security and nutrition, as well as improvement to social protection schemes, are expected to ensure the adequate access to food for the poor and vulnerable groups. However, the social protection program from the government and non-governmental agency might be just enough to meet the household basic needs and for a short period, because most of the program only run in for once or even just for 3 or 6 months. And then the government also encouraged the social capitals in communities. It was strengthened during the pandemic, such action as helping relative, friend, neighbor infected by COVID-19. Then the government also formed a task force from central to local neighborhood level, which is the smallest neighborhood level in Indonesia, to make a fast response to family with confirmed case. Support for mental health was being given through warm and friendly message that send their sympathies and prayer for the recovering their health. This social phenomenon not only helps people recover from COVID-19, but it also helps those who lost their income and jobs to meet their food and non-food needs.
Dr. Purwanto, you have 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. In conclusion, the result from this study in place the following strategies to overcome the problem in stabilizing the household income, access to food, and livelihood recovery in post-COVID-19 outbreaks. First, the COVID-19 pandemic is forcing people to change their consumption habits and behavior. They tend to eat healthy food, cook their own meal, and practice home gardening and ranching. The change of consumption happened for respondents who live in both urban and rural areas. Second, the household food security index shows that 36.2% of people are food insecure. This is because in the early phase of the pandemic, households still had financial resources from their saving to buffer the decline in their income. Moreover, many of the respondents work in the informal sector. Therefore, they tend to have more financial security. The food security index was influenced by several independent variables, such as formal employment and education, number of household members, household expenditure, food access, and consumption strategy. The results are consistent for all levels in urban and also rural. Third, the COVID-19 pandemic has made people live below a poverty line. well the urban status, food security in this education and household expenditure have a statistically significant impact on poverty. However, the social protection program have no positive outcome on preventing the increase of poverty. This program increased the purchasing power of people who have lost income, even though the amount provided by the program are less than the value of income they lost. Since this study based on rapid survey, further research involving representative samples can build upon and extend the study for more comprehensive and satisfying result, but it depends on the pandemic situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now it's the interesting time to call everyone back on the screen and to have a conversation which reflects the depth but also the specificities of all four presentations, reflecting as they are on different aspects of how societies have managed and coped with the various impacts of the COVID pandemic. And I think we've been really lucky to hear four different regional perspectives on four different themes. Nonetheless, all of them really highlight the extent to which this disruption has pushed societies to rethink the way we operate and the way we try to operate as a society, both internally but also externally in relation to some of the work on global competencies, for instance. I do have some questions, but I would like to start with those questions that have been submitted online for you. I must draw your attention that some of these questions have been answered already. For instance, there was a question to Dr. Yamada, which she has kindly already responded to in relation to the survey design. And I'm happy just to bring your attention to the fact that that question has been attended to, and it's still posted on the Q&A platform. There are a number of other questions which I'll go through right now and address them to each and every one of you, and hopefully we'll have succinct, direct responses so we can cover as many questions as we can. First question to, I think, so this presenter from Sri Lanka, so that must be Dr. Nayana. Thank you for the presentation. I had a few questions. Are the employees being trained to use the tools and technological platform? Have they been provided with the tools, e.g. laptops, to carry out their tasks? And what type of technological skills and level expected from this group of employees? Ms. Nayana, are you able to respond to that question?
Yes, from here onwards, I would like to introduce my co-researcher to answer for the questions that Professor Anthony is here. Yeah. Yes, the other questions like.
So the question is really because the paper was on digital platforms and the extent to which, So I guess the question is in relation to what kind of tools the employees or the participants in the studies have been provided with to mitigate that kind of impact. And have you accounted for that in the design?
Of course, employees were asked to use their mobiles and as well as computer, of course, to use internet. And of course, in Sri Lanka, the lower skilled labor force is much, of course, lack of these facilities. That was a major issue that we found in this study also. And what we found, of course, in this survey was that so they were willing to cooperate with the office, but they were not having that technological tools with them, like especially they did not have smartphones even. And also when we asked them about the computer and so on, whether they have the computers at their homes. So some of them, of course, had computers at their homes, but much of these people said was that they use them for their kids' work, not for the employment purposes and needs. And therefore, so they were even they were asked to report to work, of course, work environment and work needs. So they were not able to provide the support, of course, that the office was requesting from them. And so what we finally thought of course, to propose kind of a platform for them to cooperate with the office. If we can provide with them such kind of a platform, facilitating them with having some technological equipment for them to cope with the office environment, so we would be able to get much of their help, because they are all of course office workers. So those who we interviewed then of course got the discussions from, and therefore I think if we can provide with them at least some sort of technological support to them to cope with the office, so we could have got their support. Of course, work home facility and work home opportunity can be highly used if we can provide them with such tools.
Yes, I would like to add a little bit of things for that. So as he has asked that whether they have trained to use the tools and the technological platforms, of course, no. Because they are, as I mentioned, that even what we have revealed that they have the lower level of education in our education system, that the computer technology and all are being introducing at the in the grade 10, 11 in that level. So they are just about to leave that time. So because of that, they are not having chance to get the education to how to use these tools, this technology for their the day-to-day life. So that was the one of the issue here, and also that he has asked that the technological, what sort of level, the level of technology that they need to given. Actually, at least the way that they can use, I mean, getting into the email and how to use email and how to be in this the conference kind of things like the Zoom technology, how they can use the Zoom technology. All these things are found to be very important when they are coming to the work environment.
Thank you. There was a follow-up question to you, Nayana, which is in relation, what kind of interviewees you actually selected or recruited for the study? Only laborers or employees? Did you have both, or simply people who are employees?
Yeah, people who are employees in the office environment, that we have taken the interview from them. So
employees in mainly. Thank you for that.
And also we interviewed the executives.
Yeah, executives also to get to know that whether that services been, I mean, how they have received the services from them.
Very good, thank you. Just moving on quickly, because there will be more questions. I just want to make sure that we cover as many as we can. For Dr. Nguyen, there's a question in relation to how does your research evaluate the low participation of Hmong people in government's programs? Are there any obstacles identified? How are they involved with this human capital, social capital perspective that you are taking?
Yes, in the case of the human capital.
That was a question for Dr. Nguyen.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Nguyen, can you hear me? Dr. Nguyen, the lead, can you hear me? I think maybe she's not hearing me. So just, we'll come back to it in a minute if we can later on. The paper from Dr. Purmanto from Indonesia, in relation to, I think the question is basically the better economic status, the less risk families faced regarding food security. The question is, what type of assistance provided to the poor people at in situ locality, and what was the same situation faced during the second and third wave? And I just want to add to that from me personally, in relation to experience of poverty, and you mentioned that it is very much an intersectional experience, and you've highlighted some of the key variables: education, location, employment. So is the impact level of, is the level of poverty outcome, if you like, driven by certain variables, independent variables more than others? I think you did touch upon that, but perhaps if you can clarify, please, Dr. Purwanto.
Thank you. The first question from Dr. Fadila about the type of assistance given by the government. There are some types of assistance. At the beginning of the COVID outbreaks, the government provides food aid for people, especially for the poor people, and then also they include the non-food aid, which means that this is still, even they call it non-food aid, but still not a non-cash aid. But the government give a voucher card to the people, because for the food aid, the government provide food package that already include in the package. But for the non-food aid, as a voucher card, people can redeem that card in specific store, and they can get some food product that they really need. And then also there are a type of non-food aid, or we call it a cash program, that given to the poor people. That also the government also reallocate the village fund to protect their people, especially people who live in rural area, by reallocating the village fund into a non-food aid program, or we call it a cash program, a cash transfer program. And then also there is electricity subsidies that given to the low-level customer by giving a free monthly charge for the electricity, and then also a subsidy for the people who are in low income level employees. So if their monthly salary is less than 5 million rupiah, or around less than $340 US, they can get an additional income around 1.2 million rupiah, or around 80 US dollar. And then also cash aid given to small scale enterprise that really impacted by the COVID-19. For example, they have to shut down their business, and also they have to readjust their income from reducing their offset or whatever. And then they also given that kind of cash aid. And also for the student who are studying in remote area, or by using the non-face-to-face education session, and the government also give a free internet quota around 10 gigabyte per month for each student in all areas in Indonesia.
Dr. Purwanto, just a follow-up question for you from the Q&A platform again. And the question is in relation, if there's any causal relations between coping patterns with consumption needs and impacts in this regard on poverty rates in rural areas. So basically, specifically focused on rural areas in terms of the impact.
Yeah. In our survey, and the result, mostly the COVID-19 impacted the people who are living in urban area, poor people who are living in the urban area. Because most of the people who are living in rural area, whether they are poor or not poor, they still can cope with the situation, because they can use the social capital. And then also they still can get an access to cheap food, which they can get around their house or around their areas, and then they still can buy it in affordable price. And then also the government also asked the village government, by using the reallocation of the village fund, to give a cash program to the poor people in rural area. So then their consumption pattern is still in a good situation. That's the case of the rural area of Indonesia.
Very good, thank you. Perhaps if I could come back to Dr. Yamada now, because I think the concept of global competencies is really interesting, and I think probably connects with and builds on global citizenship education, all of those universal values that are aspired to be taught through that kind of global approach to a universal kind of ethics or orientation. And I'm just interested to know whether your findings in relation to global competencies, as you define them in your paper, why they're not showing statistically significant differences, in particular in relation to relationality and, openness to difference, etc. I think across all four chosen countries, that wasn't shown clearly as having a statistical significance. Do you have any kind of interpretation of why the results have been like that?
Yeah, this is very important, but a little bit difficult to cope with these questions. But the global competences I define in these studies are mostly based on the 21st century learning outcome, or kind of some of the global competences that, for example, Association of American Liberal Arts Education define or something like that. But so the sustainability or kind of consciousness about the capacity, other people, different cultures is very important. So before that, before the corona pandemic starts, the face-to-face mobility, free mobility was secured across the border in all countries. That means the free mobility between the border was secured. But after that, it was very difficult. It became very difficult to go freely across the borders. So that means that some of the things are related to the security issues or something like that. So the global competences after the corona pandemic is related to some of the such kind of very critical issues of solidarity or something like that. So I think the student, especially the young people, can improve the global competence through the face-to-face kind of experience. But in the era of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was totally impossible to across the border. So I think that most of them, the global competences consequence became deteriorated. It is essential, but the difference between the countries are we find the differences between the countries. For example, in Taiwan, as I said before, the face-to-face education was secured in a sense because controlling the corona pandemic in 2020 in Taiwan compared with other countries, very secured. So through the face-to-face education, they can improve the kind of global competence through the face-to-face education, but other countries are not. But compared with Korea and Japan, United States already has experienced online education. So, even after even in the corona pandemic era, students can access to some of the collaborative COIL type of the online education for the global competences in the United States. But other countries like Korea and Japan did not in the early 2020s. So suddenly they should cope with their online education, especially for the COIL type of the education. So students could not cope with such kind of a difference or kind of emergence change. That was a reason that caused the difference between the countries, I think. But through the online education for the COIL type of the global competences, it is possible. I think it is possible for all students in all countries, even Indonesia, Thai, and Sri Lanka, and so on, can develop the global competences through the experience.
Thank you, Doctor. Just to follow up, please, from me again. I mean, look, in Australia, we've always, or at least, predominantly, we've associated global, what we call here GCE, global citizenship education. We've associated that with mobility, student mobility. So if we want our students to acquire those skills and values and knowledges, mobility for us is the key. So we, that's how we really drove global citizenship in particular. And I'm interested and intrigued for you to reflect perhaps on how do we achieve those global competencies optimally, in an optimal manner, online? Like, what is your suggestion? What is your proposal, advice, if you like, based on the research that you've done?
Okay. Now, we, for example, our university is developing the cooperative type of the online education between country and countries. For example, our department has already experienced to develop the online type of the global education with the University of Hawaii Department of Education students. So they will, the students participating in this project can exchange and can collaborate and finish the project with based on their exchange views, discussion, and cooperate with finishing the project. And also, those younger students are very good at for the technology issues like the SNS and so on. So even after the class, they can exchange the views through the SNS or other kind of video SNS type of things. So even before the corona pandemic, we could not develop such kind of online type of the global competence program. But after that, we could do that. The problem is language.
Yes.
Language. That means that in Hawaii, there is a law that that means report, for example, reports should be written in both languages. So Japanese students can exchange with the English, but American students, even though if they are not training in Japanese, they cannot do such kind of exchange with the Japanese, but they should publish the report in both languages. That is the law in Hawaii. So such kind of very critical issue emerged at this point. So the language issue becomes the next challenging for all the world. For example, in Indonesia, we should learn the Indonesian language in addition to the English or something like that.
Thank you. Just to draw your attention, UNESCO, various regional offices, including the one in Bangkok, have really developed a lot of interesting curriculum material around some of these issues in the region, in Asia, but also taking lessons from international experience. And we've held many conferences in Bangkok to actually discuss some of these issues, how to use online teaching and education to achieve some of those competencies and aims. So I'm happy to share with you some of those resources later on. I still would like to ask Dr. Nguyen Phi a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, very good. So let me ask you a question which perhaps builds on what some questions in the audiences have been suggesting. You talk about initiating and sustaining social capital, right? And you differentiate social capital, linking and bonding, and of course, linking, bridging is more or less the same. I'm interested to in your views on how you can actually generate social capital, both types, initially bonding, but then later on you can engage in bridging, because it is a temporal thing. You know, most communities initially engage in bonding social capital because they want to build internal solidarity. And when they feel strong, they engage in bridging social capital, which is opening up for other groups. And I know you've highlighted the risk of them not engaging enough in bridging social capital. So my question to you is, what kind of activities have you observed in this kind of research which have translated or moved along that temporal continuum from bonding to bridging to ensure community resilience that you are talking about? Because that's how you get to that resilience to the impacts of COVID, through both initially bonding, but hopefully at some point in time, some bridging social capital. So what kind of strategies have you observed people utilize to ultimately achieve a notion of resilience?
Yeah, thank you for the question. As my observation on the field and my in-depth interview, online in-depth interview with the Hmong people, in this time, I focus. I have to say that for the Hmong people in Dongguan province, the bonding social capital is the most important, and it's very strong. That like you said, it might be like prevent to the Hmong people to associate with the other groups, or and the most important is that they maybe the political, social, economic background in Vietnam, between the relationship between ethnic minorities and majority in Vietnam, the trust between the Hmong people and the government, the authority is not really high, and the program, the development program of the government is not really fit with the needs of the ethnic minorities. As my interview, so they prefer to keep the relationship with the people in their group, and actually they try to connect with the other people in that other group and with the authority that linking social capital. But you know, in Vietnam, the ethnic discrimination is quite strong with the Hmong people, and they have a language difficulty barrier also. And then the gap between the Hmong ethnic group with other ethnic group, even in Dongguan, is quite large, and even with the authority, it's a gap between the understand each other. Like the government is not have programs suitable with the Hmong people, and the Hmong people, so they don't really rely on the government program. So for my perspective, I think that the bonding social capital of Hmong people is good, because it helps Hmong people in the kinship or society can recover the shock of crisis situation. However, they should try to connect with other groups and the government authority, but it's not because of themselves, but we have to think about the structure that the government need to have a conversation and need to understand the situation of Hmong people and have a more suitable development program for the Hmong people, and then they build up the trust and reliable between each other, and then Hmong people can open the social capital, like linking social capital and bridging social capital beside the bonding social capital, so that the community will be resilience, I think.
Very good. Just thank you very much. And just a final question to Dr. Purwanto, and I'm just going to stay with the theme of government. And Dr. Purwanto, I'm really keen to hear your thinking in relation to the extent to which government intervention strategies have been successful in mitigating some of those negative impacts in relation to food security and in relation to minimizing the deepening poverty of certain vulnerable communities.
That some social assistance that provided by the government really helpful for the poor people, because in terms of the speed of the program itself and also the target group, of course there are some problem with the mistargeting in some cases, but then in general we still can believe that the government intervention really help the poor people to maintain their food needs, especially during the pandemic and during the uncertainty, because at that time, people do not know when the pandemic will over or will end it, and then even now still happens. And then based on the lesson learned from the first wave of the pandemic, the government now is trying to make a better database for the poor people. We call it the single identity number, because I think in Australia something a common sense about the single identity number, but in Indonesia the accuracy of the database for the poor people is still a problem, and then the government is trying very hard to keep update the database, and then in case there are the third wave of the pandemic, they already have the system, they already have the infrastructure to help the people to meet and also minimize the risk from the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pravanto. I think we are running a little bit late, so I apologize for that. I would like to thank you, the speakers. I really learned a lot from this session. Thank you so much for fantastic presentations, both diverse in terms of the themes, but also in terms of the regional perspectives they brought to this discussion. But also thank you to the audience. So many really interesting questions that have been posted on the Q&A platform. So thank you to all of you. And thank you to the organizing team, Michelle, Anna, Jim and others. And I think the key message now is that tomorrow, session 5 on the role of social science in understanding and responding to pandemics will start tomorrow. So we hope that you will join us through the webinar link that's been emailed to you via email. So thank you all very much. Very stimulating session, and we look forward to seeing more of you tomorrow. Thank you.